So, hello and welcome to the Spinal Cord Injury Forum. My name is Jeannie Hoffman and I'm one of the co-directors of the Northwest Regional Spinal Cord Injury Model System. The forums, the video recordings, and all of our online media content are made possible through a grant from the Department of Education National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research. And tonight we are so grateful to have two wonderful people with us tonight. Last year we first started this idea of having conversations based on a lot of requests from people who wanted to hear about what other people were going through and how people coped with spinal cord injury. And so tonight we have Brom Wikstrom and Leslie Jewit, and both of them are artists, and as you can see they both brought art here. Many of Brom's paintings are propped up and Lesley has photographs propped up and in her book. And so tonight what we're going to do is just have them talk about their process and what they do and kind of who they are and just share their stories. So I'm going to pleased to turn it over to Braum and go ahead and get started.
All right, thanks Jeannie. Thank you for inviting me. This is great to be here, and I always have a soft spot in my heart for University Hospital here, where not only did I do my rehab here back in 1975 and 76, but I met my wife, Annie, and I met in the dental school, and it was one thing led to another, and we will be celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary this year. So, so we love coming up here and being this. But yeah, so I got to join this kind of exclusive club of people with spinal cord injuries. Like I say, back in 1975, I was swimming one day. I'd been traveling around and had been living in New Orleans. And so a hot day, just, like most people, just kind of wanted to cool off, and dove into what I thought was deep water, but it wasn't. So spent 7 weeks in critical care in Charity Hospital, where they finally were able to sort of stabilize my situation. But I always knew that I wanted to be an artist. I got decided that I was going to take classes, in high school and then in community college, and got a decent job working and doing signs and graphic design and sort of different aspects of commercial work. And then on the side I would do my own drawings and paintings and just sort of capture nature or my surroundings. But after I got hurt, I thought, well, I didn't know really what I was going to do, and whether I was going to have a job doing it or just use art as a way of kind of dealing with this new situation that I was encountering. I don't know, you can see some of my work. I brought in one real early piece that just kind of constituted like scribbles, really, but in looking at other artists, especially locally, that was going to inspire me, I looked at artists like Mark Tobey, Jackson Pollock, guys that didn't really use subject matter so much, but you're still using color and line and form and texture and sort of all the components that make up a decent piece of art. So just getting used to holding the brush in my teeth instead of my hands was a major kind of effort that was really frustrating at times, and I really probably thought about giving up, but the options were few. There wasn't much else I could do. But after a while I started wanting to kind of get out and try to engage in the community a little bit, and I went up to Children's Hospital to see if their volunteer program would allow me to establish a program or give me some background experience in bringing my art to patients with disabilities. Turned out to be a great experience, and anybody who's looking for some direction in their life, I highly recommend finding some volunteer work that sort of excites you and you can develop a passion about. Because I started over there not really knowing how my own life was going to go, and I saw kids that had been disabled their whole lives. And this was a big source of inspiration to me, and certainly made me feel like I didn't have a lot of time to kind of feel sorry for myself or you know, manipulate others to get some sort of satisfaction. But I applied for a grant after we had been working there. A buddy of mine and I had been up there for about 3 or 4 months and got a grant. The Seattle Arts Commission was offering what was called a Comprehensive Employment Training Act. It was a 6-month period of time, and then I got another 6 months extension afterwards, and it was great. We set up a program in the rehab unit and the teen unit, and we showed the work around. I was able to take some of the kids' work down to a cooperative gallery downtown, and that came to the notice of special ed teachers around the area, and they asked me to start doing guest sort of presentations in some of the local schools and arts festivals. And there's, you know, all communities have their sort of little regional art festival, whatever it is. And these are all ways that I started showing my work and getting the word out about and making contacts and trying to, you know, sort of establish a career in the arts. It turned out to be a good experience. I joined 2 groups that really made a big difference for me. One is now called VSA Arts. Very Special Arts is what it was known as for a while. And I volunteered again and served on their board and did a lot of festivals and started developing some experience in arts administration, which, you know, I never would have thought prior to my injury that would be something that I'd gravitate towards or have any interest in at all. But, you know, to see the opportunities that are around for artists and what it takes to network and interact and try and make something happen does take a lot of work. So where I used to think, you know, it was great to kind of sit in my ivory tower and do my paintings and sort of get in touch with my inner self or whatever, the nuts and bolts really took over. And, you know, wanting to get the necessary experience was all I could do. So aside from VSA, where my wife and I have traveled around the world for festivals that they've done, I've also been able to do a lot of traveling with this group, the Association of Mouth and Foot Painting Artists. And I joined them in 1985, and they do direct mail for greeting cards and calendars, and I'm sure some of you must have received some of their cards in the past. But it's been around 50 years now and is a tremendous organization. They have over 400 members around the world in 50-odd countries, and they reproduce my work on cards and calendars and gift wrapping and all kinds of products, jigsaw puzzles, and I don't have to worry about marketing my work now. They handle all of that for me. I did have to relinquish reproduction rights, but that's all. I still maintain ownership of my work. They send it back to me so that I can exhibit it and sell it. The only piece I brought over that relates to that is that first piece there, that little sunburst that, you know, might be appropriate for a greeting card design or not. And so it's always been kind of tricky for me to find a subject that satisfies my desire to create and you know, develop as an artist, but that is also commercially viable for their needs. But they've been so good to us, and we've made some wonderful friendships with artists from all over the world, and many of them were born without arms or, you know, have been disabled their whole lives, and it's really exciting to get a hold of them. Locally, I work up at the Burke Museum, and I was able to get a position through the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. I had approached them earlier about getting some framing done for a show that I wanted to have, and I'd done all the work, and to my mind, thought I had demonstrated my ability to sort of, you know, work and have a career in the arts. They were a little non-committal at the time. So in asking them what they could do for me, they you know, I took their aptitude tests and sort of started jumping through the hoops that DVR kind of makes you go through. But they did call around. They got me a position over at the Burke, answering the phones, and I do reception work in the staff areas. Just one day a week now, but if I wasn't involved in these other activities, I'm sure I could get a few more hours, and because it's a really exciting place. Those of you who haven't been there, you know, I really encourage you to get up there and check out the dinosaurs and the totem poles and all the stuff they have. It's really an exciting place. I've been there now for 25 years. So it's a real fun place and a great environment to be in. The other thing I do is there's a local organization called the Puget Sound Group of Northwest Painters. And I've been involved with them, gosh, actually my whole life. My father was an artist, and he was an early member, and I joined when I was about 23 or 24. So it's a nonprofit group, and we have an annual auction that we produce. And so I've served as their board president and auction chairman, and it's, you know, like any nonprofit group, it's all sort of devoted to volunteers, and so those people, you know, sometimes can have a real good experience and know how to operate a group, or like this group, they're all wonderful artists, but you know, they could use some skills in actually operating the group. But still, we get together for sketch trips and have exhibitions locally. And it's nice to kind of make those contacts throughout the art community here locally and the greater Northwest region at large. So that's kind of what I do. I do have a painting of mine here at the hospital. Any of you who are up on 8 North can see a painting that I did, gosh, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago probably by now. That's up there. But it's awfully nice to get in the collection here. The University of Washington Hospital has really one of the best art collections of any of the kind of local institutions around. So those of you who've had a chance to get around sure know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. I know we want to set some time aside for some questions, but.
So, Brom, if you could just talk a little bit about kind of how has your injury affected your art? You were an artist before you were injured, it sounds like, and how's that changed?
Well, just like nuts and bolts really is, you know, although I use a splint when I'm eating, I found that doing artwork with my mouth was really the only way that was going to sort of allow me to develop in a way that was similar to the kinds of art that I was producing prior to my injury. But one of the sort of pleasantly surprising things about it was that prior to my injury I did a lot of drawing, a lot of pen and ink things, and so it was mostly black and white. And it wasn't until I started using my mouth that I was using a brush, and mostly just because I didn't have to bear down really hard and put extra sort of stress on my jaw, that I started developing a sense of color that I hadn't done before. So I have had some issues with my TMJ, which you know, has gone from just being mildly annoying to, you know, fairly painful, and I've had to kind of limit the time that I paint. And I was doing a lot of writing, and I keep a journal, and sort of using a ballpoint pen didn't work out so good. So thank God computers came around, and that's made life a lot easier. And I do have a website that you're sure welcome to check out. I've got some business cards over here for you if you want.
I've been an artist for a long time. I kind of discovered photography when I found this really crappy pocket 110 in a snowbank, and after that took thousands of bad duck sunsets and trees and everything else, and thank God they all went into the garbage. But I'm still a photographer after my accident, and my accident, it's kind of a new thing for me. I'm new to this handicappedness. On May 22nd of 2006, I got hit by a driver high on cocaine. I was just standing there waiting for the bus, and 2 weeks later I woke up out of a coma, and they asked me, "Do you know where you are?" And I said, "Am I still waiting for the bus?" They said, "No, ma'am, you're in Harborview." And I said, "Oh my God." And then the next question I asked is, "Where's my camera?" And they said, "Don't you want to find out about your legs?" I said, "No, where's my camera?" And they said, well, you can't walk. And I said, great, where's my camera? Well, I didn't have my camera, thank God, with me. I was just leaving work, and well, I didn't make it home. So yeah, it was definitely an adventure right there. But I now do art after my accident, and it's the only thing that really keeps me truly happy. And I have a bunch of art over there, and some of it's before my accident and some of it's after my accident. Before my accident, I used to go all over the place, pea patches and down alleys, on the waterfront, on boats, you name it. But now after the accident, I can't do all that because a lot of it is not really accessible in Seattle. And a lot of it you really have to watch out because you can pop your tires because people throw glass and other stuff. And so I've had lots of flats. So yeah, as I said, the art is the only thing that really keeps me happy. And you know, I've really had to modify the way I do my art. My studio now is all tabletop because I used to have the big lights and the studio, but now everything is just small, so I have to shoot smaller stuff and when I used to shoot bigger stuff. So, but you know, there's lots of organizations that'll help you modify your art if you want to. If you go to like Glacier Camera, they can help you custom build some art, some stuff to do studio photography. I shoot a lot of nature scenes and I shoot a lot of graffiti. And I did have an art display up in Harborview. Unfortunately, I had to take it down because people kept stealing it. So I guess I was really popular. 2 pieces of the same thing, 2 pictures of blue roses got stolen and somebody stole the daffodil. But it was up there for a year. And now I also have an art display up in Starbucks, which is, it's all funky graffiti. I went around the neighborhood, all the neighborhoods, and took pictures of people's faces. Only they weren't normal faces. They were all graffiti, spray paint, metal work, mosaics. And so and I called it, you know, who are the people in your neighborhood from that Cornball Sesame Street song? So you can see like there's a whole crowd of people in your neighborhood, you just don't notice. And I do have another art display that is up at Seattle Mobile Expresso, which is next to my house. And they have flowers and stuff, and she's going to carry my cards in there too. So she's really trying to help the neighborhood, and she has lots of other people she helps out. So there's all sorts of art displays in her thing. And for the Starbucks, I'm going to go around, they call it doing a circuit, so I'm going to put my art in as many Starbucks as I can. And then I also have artwork up at, it's called Jaywalk in Madrona. She took on a bunch of my cards. And then I'm going to try the Seattle Art Museum. I don't know if I'm Jackson Pollock enough for them. And then a lot of my cards go to Florida, they go to Vermont, they go to North Carolina, and Olympia. They go all over the place. So just about every state somebody's got my card. So I'm working on being famous with my photography.
Do you have a website?
I do. It's a really oddball name. It's called Blooming Idiot Photo. Because most of my artwork is flowers and stuff. I know it comes from the 9th century insult. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's a British insult. But but you know, I was planning on using my artwork to help me pay for, and I'm still trying to get back into Pushing Boundaries, which has really helped me out. I don't know if you guys are all familiar. I've seen some of you from Pushing Boundaries, and I think you're at Pushing Boundaries, aren't you? Yeah, well, you should be. It's really wonderful. They do exercise. They help you do exercise, and then they help you try to get leg movement back. And I got a little, because I'm an incomplete T12L1. So, I mean, I'm still trying to get it back. But when I get the money going again, I'm going to go back to Pushing Boundaries, because it's the only way I can get exercise, which, you know, helps me with my photography. If I can't stay fit, it's really hard to do stuff. But
have you had to adapt, like, your cameras that you use or anything due to your disability? Or?
no, the camera I really haven't. The studio equipment, and you know, the other thing I had to do, I started taking more Paxil because, you know, it's other people that are, you know, with injuries, depression is a hard thing to deal with. And so I deal with a lot of depression, so it makes it really hard to get into my photography. And unfortunately, I also had to take on, you know, take a few other drugs like baclofen and up my Neurontin, because when you have spasticity, you can't do anything. You just sit there and cry because your legs just freeze up like cement, and it really hurts. So anybody that's got spasticity, you know what I'm talking about. So it makes it almost impossible to do my art. So, I mean, that's the things that have really changed for me, is taking more drugs and dealing with depression. Because I used to be a really happy person. I like to think I'm really a happy person, but when people go, oh, wow, you got a really good attitude, I said, yeah, I got really good at Paxil.
Do you develop your own artwork, or do you work with a studio, or no?
I have my own, I have these little, it looks like a lunch pail, it's a little tiny Epson printer I print it at home. I don't like the studio color, the way they print it, because the colors are just wrong. So if everybody likes my printing at home. So yeah, I've been doing pretty good. My sister's the queen of marketing, so she's the one that's really helping me. And I mean, she got me about $1,500 last year just selling my artwork. And you know, the one thing that having an injury like this does for you is you're like, wow, I've already faced death and I beat it. I'm a little messed up, but I beat death, so well, I can beat anything else. I have nothing to lose by going to ask all these stores and museums and other places like Starbucks, you know, you want my artwork, can I put it up? And, you know, sometimes you do have to use the sympathy card a little bit. I try not to use the sympathy card, but my sister does it more than I do. So, I want people to like my artwork, not go, oh, well, she's crippled. No, I'm just a little different. So,
And your photos, are they different now than before your injury?
no, they're pretty much the same photos. I can't get down on the ground to do the photos. So, you know, I go to places like, you'll see me at Swanson's all the time. I love Swanson's. Or I go to Mobax. Or sometimes I go to Sky Nursery, and I always ask permission when I go there, and they don't mind that I take pictures of their tabletop flowers and stuff. I did go to the Tulip Festival. That was a little difficult for me. Sitting in we went up there, and it took 3 people to get me into a Prius. Had one person with their arms under my armpits, one person holding my legs, and then I don't know what the third person was doing, but but they're dragging me across the back, and I'm sitting there trying to hold up my pants because I really didn't want to pee in the back of a brand new Prius. But they're holding up I'm holding up my pants, and when we finally got me in there, but thank God it took like a half an hour. And then we decided to use a Subaru afterwards. That only took 20 minutes, but we had to tip the seat way back because my knee doesn't bend anymore. I have heterotopic ossification, which is HO. Basically, your muscle sort of turns to bone, and you got this like big block in there, and it just don't bend. So we had to tip the seat way back, pull the seat way back, and then we kind of had to turn me onto the side, get my feet in there, and then I could sit back up, and that takes like 20 minutes. And it's kind of difficult because I almost have to get into the driver's seat to get me just into the passenger seat. So that's a little fun. And then I did do some art, and I did some pictures down in North Carolina, and I visited my dad. Now that was an adventure because I had to go sit in I told him I'm not flying down unless I go first class. So I don't know if, as a disabled person, if you've ever flown, but that's a little difficult too, because you see everybody wandering around, you're like, oh, I want to wander around too, but you have to sit there and do pressure releases in first class, and at least I got lobster dinner while I was doing it. But but yeah, when I got to my parents' house, he really didn't realize how hard it was for me, but you know, he had to do a lot of lifting and help me, and my mother had to help me get into the shower, and it was really stressing for him, and they cried all the time. And I told him, don't feel sorry for me. I still got my hands. I can do my art, and I'm still living, and that's the important part. So, all right. Well, I think that's all I got to say.
Well, Actually, Brom, it reminded me, how about you, would you mind talking a little bit about your travel? Because you were talking about your travel experience, and I know Brom's done actually a lot of travel.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that my wife Ani really enjoys traveling, and the traveling that we've done for this association that has conventions every 3 years, they pull out all the stops. They take care of all the transportation issues. But those occasions when we've traveled on our own, it takes a lot of patience and a good sense of humor, and just I don't know. There's yeah, our motto: go with the flow. I don't know what else you can say. It's just it's pretty much the only way you can do it. So, but I think after you've done it a few times and you realize that you get to board early and you know what kind of questions to ask and everything, that it's not really that daunting. I think those occasions when we've been kind of unhappily surprised is in smaller planes where they don't have jetways and I have to be sort of hauled down and stuff. But it actually, what works out well with it is the fact that we're kind of first on and last off the plane. By the time they've brought somebody in to help do a transfer into an aisle seat and then back into my chair, our bags are arriving down in baggage claim. So it's actually worked out pretty well generally. But yeah, sitting for 13, 14 hours at a stretch is no piece of cake either.
How do you do pressure release?
I just kind of lean from side to side or lean forward, and Ani sometimes will kind of get behind me and lift my rear end off for a bit. But
I have a question. Do you travel with that chair?
I do.
Okay, so do you take your wheels off? Like you probably keep your cushion, but do you take your wheels off too, or?
There's only been a couple times when we were able to bring the chair into the cabin. Normally we check it in, and they put a special tag that has it brought up to the gate when we get at our destination. But I don't think I've really had to take the tires off.
Does your chair?
We just flew to California a few weeks ago. We went down there and they bent the axle on the chair. So.
Wow.
I don't know how they did it. They bent it like right in the middle. I was
Yeah.
just wondering if there was like any tricks for
We
slowing it or.
Yeah, I mean and I've noticed it with the Rojo that I sit on too. When you get up in those higher elevations, it kind of overinflates it.
Oh really?
And
Oh,
so I have to
seriously?
kind of like take a little extra air out.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's all you can do, I guess. And I don't know, I haven't had any trouble with the tires that way.
I was just wondering if somebody I know had mentioned like storing the tires in the overhead, like when they flew, but I didn't know.
I don't think, have we ever done that? Yeah, no, we've been pretty lucky, I guess.
Yeah.
Really, I think there was one occasion where they broke a couple spokes.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and I'll lose a knob or two, but they sent us to a bicycle shop and fixed it at the airline's expense. So the only hassle there is, when you're traveling, the last thing you want to do is give up a bunch of time to go sit in a repair shop for a few hours.
And if your chair is collapsible and they put it into storage, make sure they put it back together right, because when I got into North Carolina, they didn't put the chair back to right, so I went to go use the restroom. I couldn't get the arm up, so had to take 3 people from the airline to lift me off and put me on the toilet. It was kind of embarrassing, but they put the seat pan right over the arms, and so the arms were pinned down, so I'm freaking out.
I've got a power chair that I use sometimes too, and I've traveled with that, and that creates a whole another series of issues that they're familiar with. So I think it's as long as the batteries are sealed, and there's no chance that if they tip over, any battery acid's going to run out. I think that's the thing that they're concerned about the most.
So Leslie, what has been a positive for your art since your injury?
Getting it into more places. More people are seeing it. I'm not afraid anymore. I used to be, doing art is easy. That's the easiest part. Marketing is the hardest part, and so I'm not afraid to market anymore. If people don't like it, well, then I'm not afraid to ask, is there something that I could do better that would make it more appealing to you? And if people say, well, this is not my type, then I ask them, can I shoot something else for you? I'm just not afraid anymore, so that's just gotten me into more places. So.
And you're showing your work mostly in coffee shops and
Starbucks. I'm going to take it to the Seattle Art Museum. Have you been to the Shoreline Arts Council?
No.
They put my stuff up there too. So.
Nice.
Yeah, and then the Harbor View, and I might ask here. Who knows? I'm going to go around to the hospitals and ask to stick my art in there.
I think it's partly, you know, I also sit on the Washington State Arts Commission, and it's really satisfying to see how a lot of the arts, photography as well as dance and music and drama, are becoming more and more accessible all the time. I think that a lot of the venues have realized that they've got a sort of an untapped market out there, and there's an audience that really wants to come and to take part in their performances if they would just, you know, make a little effort to make it accessible to them. Well, there are this VSA group that I mentioned is an educational affiliate of the Kennedy Center, but the National Endowment for the Arts.
Is this something that Lesley would be, as far as photography, does?
Oh, I'm sure that there must be opportunities. You know, like I just submitted some of my paintings to the festival that will be going on in Washington, D.C. next year. And they also include photography as well as sort of traditionally craft, you know, pottery, and here in Seattle, of course, glass is as well respected of an art form as any. So it's a matter of kind of getting out there and making those contacts and seeing, you know, where you can get your work shown. And it's a bit of a challenge, but, you know, with a little, you know, help from others, you know, you can at least get your kind of foot in the door and start making a name for yourself.
So other people have questions for these guys. We've kind of been asking a little bit along the way.
Leslie, I think you kind of touched on a little bit, but what did art do for both of you in terms of your, you know, getting past your injury and kind of getting you back into things, in terms of being therapeutic? Yeah, how would you say that art helped you or didn't help you in that respect?
Well, doing art takes your mind off things that you don't want to think about. If you're doing art, you don't think, oh, well, I can't walk. I can just do art, you know. And if I'm really in pain, and then I just do art, and then it helps me get past the pain. I don't, because my legs hurt all the time, and then I don't think about it as much if I'm shooting pictures. And sometimes I just, you know, because I'm in a wheelchair and my legs look kind of chewed up, and I feel kind of ugly sometimes. I feel really ugly looking. And, you know, I just take beautiful pictures, and that just makes me feel beautiful in some way.
I think for me, Chris, you know, when it takes you, you know, 2, 3, 4 hours just to get up out of bed and through your morning routines and things, there's a sense of, you know, like you don't have a whole lot of time to waste. And I really just got to work. And when there were so many other things that I couldn't do, I could still do my art. And it was really satisfying to see that I could not only create it for myself, but to take that out into the community, and whether it was at Children's Hospital and working with patients and, you know, or applying for exhibitions around the country and putting my stuff in. So it really gave me a focus, I think, in my life. I was 21 when I had my injury and felt like I had all the time in the world. But then all of a sudden, you know, I realized that, you know, time is much more precious than that, and started really focusing on what gave me satisfaction and what did I want to spend my time doing. And if people liked it, then great. If they didn't, well, then, you know, at least I was satisfying my own sort of urge to create something. So it helps.
I'm curious about your works that you paint with your mouth. You know, what's the process used? How do you set up? Do you need help?
Yeah.
Can you do it by yourself? How long does it take you to do a painting? What's your process like?
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, even start to finish, picking subject matter and
I don't know. I guess
all of that.
You know, like most people, I'm inspired by nature, probably first and foremost, and So I can, you know, my wife is an outstanding gardener, and our backyard is like this Garden of Eden, really. And so if I take some watercolors and some paints out into the backyard, I'm going to find something to paint. In the colder months, you know, I work from photographs that I've taken, or that Anita's taken, and just out of my head, some of my work you can tell is kind of design oriented and somewhat abstract, and it's always surprising to me when, you know, you start in one style and it kind of develops. You try something else, or you put a different spin on a subject that you've done previously. As much as I would like to use oil paints, I think the way I'm using it, because I kind of work at a table, I don't really work out at an easel, that, you know, the fumes and stuff, the few times I've tried doing it with the turpentine and all that, is just, whoa. So yeah, I've pretty much stuck with watercolors. And like Leslie was saying too, I'm somewhat limited in the size that I can work at. As much as I'd like to do, you know, really large pieces, I did a fairly large thing for the Seattle Aquarium. The Easter seals commissioned me to do a piece, and I ended up kind of doing like a border, and then I could have kind of cut that out and put another piece, you know, up inside of it. And so there's kind of ways around the limitations that I have with size, but you know, it seems to work. And actually, you know, you can work on a small piece, but still put lots of detail into it. But where I used to spend, you know, 10, 12 hours a day, I'm probably only spending maybe 4 or 5 hours a day painting. And normally, I don't know how it is with photography, but you know, it takes a good hour or two just to kind of get warmed up, and you know, for the day is kind of, you know, things start flowing a little better after you've been at it for a while. So it's not something that you can really just, you know, do for a half hour here and come back in a few hours and, you know, do another little bit. You really got to kind of stay at it if you want it to get good. And then materials, you know, if you get good red sable brushes, the piece you're going to do is going to be easier, and it's going to turn out a lot better than if you were just, you know, grabbing the first brush that comes along. So a little trick to pick up.
So pretty much, like when you're painting, you would paint downwards, like on a table.
Yeah,
like
it
you
might be
lean
a
forward?
little inclined.
Like a higher table, maybe,
Mhm.
or okay.
And I've got a lower table that if I'm using longer brushes,
Oh, okay.
and I don't have quite as much control with the longer brushes, but if I'm working outside, you know, I'm just working on my lap, really, or maybe with a little side table. So I'll use longer brushes for that.
So, do either of you have problems or conflicts with, if you make money on your art, you know, the whole issue of income and benefits, and whether you make too much income to get the benefits that you would get if you didn't have any income, and just if that figures into your
Yeah, that's a real awkward situation, you know, and because artists, it's kind of feast or famine. And
taxes.
yeah, the taxes get messed up. Well, for example, I won an award to have one of my paintings put onto a mural down in Kent, and I think it was $1,500 or something. And at the time, you could only make, I think, maybe $150 or something before they would start sort of taxing onto your benefits. And so we were able to prorate out for the entire year this $1,500 so that it didn't conflict with the thing. But the funds that I receive from my other group come in the form of a stipend. So it's not earned income, which doesn't sort of count on their, you know, the way they compute things. And then the one day a week that I work up at the Burke Museum, you know, doesn't conflict with things too. So I've managed myself to kind of stay within the bounds of what they allow, and haven't really looked into.
So you can still get your health benefits and yeah.
If you're on the COPES plan, there's health care for workers with disability, HWD. So if you have a caregiver that comes in, and you still have to pay for part of your caregiver, but it's a lot less than what it was. But I have a business license with the city of Seattle, but so far I haven't made enough to conflict with, with the rest of my money. So, but with the health care for workers, they only take a percentage out versus, before they passed a law that's just last month. It used to be before they take out half your money if you made over a certain amount, which is like 865 or some ridiculously low amount. And then they take 50% of it over that, but they've suddenly changed it.
The one thing that I had to deal with was when I accepted the grant to teach at Children's Hospital, that Social Security, I don't know if they still do, but at the time they had a trial work period. So it was like 9 months where you could be paid and still receive your benefits. But once that trial work period is over with, then it's gone for good. And so here I am accepting grant money that I know has a finite term to it, and not really knowing at the time how that was going to affect my future as far as applying for a steady job could have really been a problem for me. But as it turned out, for me, I managed to get in with a group that, it didn't really conflict. But yeah, I could see where that would be a real tricky situation for artists or for anybody that, wants a job but doesn't know if that job's going to be there beyond what Social Security allows. Kind of fun.
I was wondering if either of you had formal kind of training before and or after in photography and painting.
I read a lot of magazines that are photography oriented, and I read a lot of books, and my sister's a professional photographer, so if I have any questions, I just call her up on the phone and she tells me how to photograph something if I can't figure it out. But no, it progressed from the cheap pocket 110 in the snowbank to what you see now.
For me, Chris, I did take a couple years of sort of college level art courses. But it wasn't until after my injury that I did take a few courses in art therapy. I thought maybe that would be something that I would gravitate towards, so I took some Antioch, had some workshops, and University Extension classes also. And then SPU was offering a summer program in art therapy. And that's where I learned about this VSA group, because they were kind of the ones running the program. And it put me in touch with a lot of people right away. So you never really know, what kind of connections you're going to make when you get out there. But just taking those workshops made a big difference for me. Yeah, it was really great.
Leslie, so what are you using now? Now that I'm sure, do you still have your snowbank camera?
I have no idea what that thing is. I have a Canon XSI, which is it's a digital Rebel. It's the latest generation, so it's an SLR.
And so I assume like different lenses that you put on and off that, and
yeah, I have quite a few. Mostly I use the macro lens, the 100mm macro for really extreme close-ups, because I really like close-up photography.
So just one last question for both of you, and then we can break up. And I know that these guys are willing to stick around, but I also want to have people have an opportunity to kind of check out all the wonderful art that's here tonight. But what advice would you give to somebody who is newly injured about getting either back into art or getting into art, or kind of, doing something different or redoing it?
I think it's kind of the same as if you were non-disabled. For artists, you have to put together a portfolio of your work. And whereas before, when I was in the commercial art business, I would go to ad agencies or, different, try to make contacts in how you get, work freelance or working through a company. So those kinds of things haven't changed. But I think with the onset of websites and sort of ways that you can get your work out there, there's more opportunities than ever to sort of get that experience and have some exposure for your work. I also would recommend, not like I mentioned before, volunteering, but also using kind of local resources. And I know I showed some of my work in kind of like the local art festival. And, you know, I didn't make too many sales, but, you know, I met a lot of people, and some news organizations that were coming around were reporting on my work. And so you never really know, you know, what's going to happen until you do get out there and try and get your work shown. So even in, you know, like Leslie's case, showing in a coffee shop, you know, might not seem very prestigious at first, but, you know, somebody's going to go in there for a cup of coffee and respond to the work, and, you know, next thing you know, you're in a gallery.
Yeah, I've had people walk up to me and go, "Aren't you that lady who put the weird exhibit up at the Starbucks?" I'm like, yeah, that would be me. I guess you just got to start small and just work at getting bigger pieces, you know. Talk to people who are in your situation. You can do web searching. You know, there are stores out there that do help other disabled people. I mean, that help disabled people, you know, develop their art. Like Glacier Camera would be willing to build custom stuff. You know, like they have a guy that he's got like a stand on his wheelchair on his arm. He just straps it on, and then he can rest his arm up here and point his camera, because he's almost a quad, so he has very limited arm strength, but he can still do photography because that's his thing, and he does some really, really cool work because there was a store out there that, you know, was willing to help him out. And you just find places like that.
Do you have a website as well to look at?
It's Blooming Idiot Photo.
And mine is bromwikstrom.com.
Yours sounds better than mine.
And the second question is, have you considered ever teaching painting?
Well, yeah. Actually, that was one of the surprising things about, you know, being disabled and, you know, taking my art in different directions was something that I would not have thought that I'd get a lot out of. But the arts commissions have teaching rosters. And so where before I would do kind of very informal, just kind of presentations and go into the schools, they had me take it much more seriously. And Ani and I both have done some kind of extended classes, mostly with kind of elementary to junior high, and developed, you know, big curriculums and had exhibitions afterwards in the local libraries or wherever. So it's something that I do fairly regularly. Usually 3 or 4 a year anyway. Yeah, it's great. I love it.
All right. Any other questions, just come up and feel free to ask directly. But first of all, I just want to thank you guys so much for coming and sharing your stories. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.